Afghanistan episode, what prompted you? Like, where did the madness come from?
You can't just sit and say that, oh, if I go there, I'll get killed. The Taliban will do something. That's you're not a
Make it
journalist.
sound like it's not a big deal. You just go there, you get killed by Taliban.
A normal, common Afghan girl or Afghan boy would tell me that, our dream is to go to India, detained for a couple of hours by the Afghan police there because I was, like a typical Indian tourist and journalist. I was taking photos one after another. So they say that you're a Pakistani spy, aap ISI ke ho, because you also have a Pakistan ISI sitting there. So it was a win for India at that point of time to have that many number of consulates. लोग बस ऐसे ही काबुल में रास्ते में चले गए कि कहाँ है तालिबान, हम उनको मारेंगे. सबके पास एक एक गन था. I mean, from a 60-year-old man to a 10-year-old boy, everybody had a gun. Casually, slinging from their shoulders, and they would say, सामने दिखेंगे तो मार देंगे. So it's like that. So sitting there on the terrace, I realized, wow, Kabul is this fantastic city. You can enjoy kebab sitting on a terrace. But then I realized there's not a single woman sitting out there. While I was talking on the camera, I realized I'm surrounded by at least 50 men. In the middle of the road, खड़े होके आपको अगर video shoot करना है, ये सब आपको खोलना पड़ेगा. So then I had to, open all that up, and I then did my... So they were selling caps in that shop, right? And it was, it's like a typical bazaar that you see even in Chandni Chowk and all. But the backside, they were selling all the Kalashnikovs. And then eventually I saw rows of grenades, Kalashnikovs, like you can buy onion or potatoes.
क्या दाम पे मिलती है?
दाम तो मैंने खैर पूछा नहीं था, but then they said anywhere from 1,000 Indian rupees to 10,000 Indian rupees. I was in the US also when the 9/11 happened. We were told that since you are Indians, आप लोग अपना traditional salwar kameez मत पहनिए. A terror attack can really change the color of a society.
So how did Shah Rukh Khan save you from Afghanistan?
And now you're handing over that very country onto them on a platter. So what was your war on terror at all? I would really tell you, Zain, the reaction I got from my son, who was that time 8.5, 9. He just told me one thing, that okay, you're going. He said 23rd August is my birthday, tab tak aap aa jana. That's the promise you have to make me. My son said, I will not stop you. I know you will go. And one day, when I grow up, I'll tell my friends that देखो मेरी माँ गई थी. तो देश के लिए मर मिटने वाले soldiers होते हैं. Nobody thinks that देश के लिए मर मिटने वाले to some extent journalists भी होते हैं.
Okay, imagine this. अफगानिस्तान में तालिबान काबुल के दरवाजे पे खड़ी है. The country is about to fall any moment. हिंदुस्तान से एक जर्नलिस्ट उसे कवर करने जाती हैं, and कुछ ही दिनों में काबुल actually falls and goes into a state of chaos. और बाकी कहानी है कि कैसे जर्नलिस्ट वहाँ अपनी ज़िंदगी को मैनेज करती हैं और बचा कर वापस अपने देश, अपने लोगों के पास आती हैं. Sounds like a great Hollywood, Bollywood thriller, right? The only difference is कि ये कहानी किसी स्क्रिप्ट की नहीं, ये एक्चुअली नयनिमा बासु की एक्चुअल स्टोरी है. एंड एज आई से कि कुछ कहानियाँ सुनने का मज़ा उन्हीं की ज़बान से आता है who actually lived it. I have with me Nayanima Basu, a seasoned journalist and author of a new book, The Fall of Kabul: Dispatches from Chaos. Thank you so much, Nayanima, for taking out time to do this.
Thank you, Zain. Well, it is wonderful to be with you. It's just, quite a good experience to be sitting with you and talking about the book.
मुझे लोगों की more than anything, I love hearing people and their stories of how they reach from point A to point B, and that's the whole idea of my podcast. So before I delve more into your book and your career in general, I wanted to understand what your childhood was like. Was it like every other girl in your city, or was it slightly different from the beginning?
No, so I've been, of course, born a Bengali, brought up in a typical Bengali household. But because of my father's job, we would be traveling all the time. So I was there in Kolkata, in that time Calcutta, of course, and then Bombay and, Delhi, of course, was where I was born. And finally, I'm settled in Delhi, so to say. Being a typical Bengali household, studies were everything. I never really... planned to be a journalist because my background, my parents, they all come from corporate sector. My mother was a teacher. But then I always had a knack of writing. And so I think that eventually was my calling, despite the fact that I started my career with General Electric, that's an American conglomerate. But then I very soon realized I was in the US also when the 9/11 happened. So I think incidents happened with sort of the way I grew up. The year I grew up, I mean, I was born 1979, तब ईरान revolution हुआ था. So, I think incidents have followed my life, and it feels good in a way that I thought writing and, geopolitics is something जो मुझे हमेशा अच्छा लगता था.
So do you invite trouble or does the trouble invite you?
I don't know. I think वो मेरे फैमिली में भी मुझे बोलते हैं कि जहाँ तू जाती है कुछ ना कुछ होता रहता है, so ये क्यों होता है? And seriously, I mean, when I was in US, I mean, कभी नहीं किसी ने नहीं सोचा था 9/11 की तरह एक टेरर अटैक हो जाएगा. I saw firsthand कैसे American society, which is so liberal. I mean, at that time, we were like bunch of young graduates from Delhi University. In one day, I saw how in America also, and I was always into my traditional dresses and all of that. We were told that since you are Indians, after 9/11 of course, although in Virginia आप लोग अपना traditional salwar kameez मत पहनिए, always wear Western clothes. And then I realized that how a terror attack can really change a color of a society, and you don't really, that's where you are tested, आप कितने liberal हो. So I think, so that has always been my way of looking into the world and society.
This idea of questioning things, these ideas of, if I'm allowed to say, rebellion, these ideas of fear, bravery, bravado, did you see or feel that when you were a child as well, or was it something that you developed later?
Not really. I mean, to be honest with you, as a child, I was very introvert. I still think I'm introvert. I don't really talk much whenever I'm in a group or sitting with people. But one thing I guess I got from my childhood, एक जो सुनने की क्षमता होती है, right? I believe in hearing more than talking. Somewhere बचपन से भी सिखाया जाता है that you don't talk much. The fact that my father used to tell me that you need to open up more and talk to people. But questioning करने का, I think that kind of perspective came when I was in college, and I was I'm very proud of the college I'm from, Indraprasth College for Women. Which really creates firebrand women, and they nurture the rebellious nature in you. Childhood, again, yes, I was always very rebellious. I never believed in people dictating me what I should be doing, and which is eventually how I came to journalism. I didn't really choose the career paths that my parents dreamt.
So did this childhood rebellion get you in trouble with your parents often? I'm assuming it would have.
Yes, to some extent, but then they understood me very well. Of course, with my, other extended families, even after getting married, my in-laws also realized that she will not be the one who will be the typical daughter-in-law. So, and thankfully, my husband is also a journalist, so he understands, also when I told him that I'm planning to go to Afghanistan, he was the first one to say that, okay, take your time. If you want to go and do that, then be ready for it. Don't reach there and start crying. And with my parents, nahi kabhi itna trouble to hua nahi. But I guess beyond a point, my parents also gave up. Ki, ye jo karegi, theek kar legi. But they stopped advising me. Eventually, when I also met my husband, who was at that time, we were, kind of not dating, I would say, but we were going around. So then that time also parents realized that they were not really okay with it. Then they realized that, okay, isme bhi bol ke kuch fayda nahi hai. They knew that it will be a good person for her. But yeah, these are the little things that have taught me very early on that if you are in the right track, you can eventually convince your parents what you are planning to do.
But do you think a woman's rebellion and a man's rebellion are seen differently by families?
Yes, of course they do. In my case, I mean, me and my brother, we were brought up at, like as the same gender. But then I guess somewhere deep down that differentiation happens all the time. Because then again, when my brother, and he's been also very rebellious, but उसके केस में मैंने देखा जब वो कुछ भी कन्विंस करने का कोशिश करता था, he would really win at one go, whereas it will take me months to convince my parents. So I don't know, maybe parent. I mean, now that I am also a mother of a little child, I realize where parents come from. But हाँ, एक वो gender discrimination आ ही जाता है, whatever you do. Let's say in my this Afghanistan case, had my brother wanted to go for it, entire family would have supported. Here, everybody was apprehensive. But then there are other factors also for that. For a woman journalist to go, you're exposing yourself to a lot of dangers, not just one factor. So yeah, coming back to your question, discrimination एक level पे आ ही जाता है psychologically, whether you want it to be like that or not.
मुझे भी ऐसा लगता है that we'll become an egalitarian society जिस दिन our fears will be the same. Like I'll fear for say my wife or my daughter or my sister the same fears that I have for myself. But अभी तक वो नहीं है. Like I feel that the fears for a woman are very different from fears for a man. मैं अगर रात में बाहर जा रहा हूँ मुझे इकलौता ये डर है कि कोई लूट लेगा मुझे. Whereas with the woman I'm like कोई kidnap कर ले कोई all of that. And I think that somewhere is a factor in contributing towards reacting differently to these rebellions.
From parents' perspective, it is also quite deep rooted because उनका वो भी होता है कि हमने जिंदगी तुमसे ज़्यादा देखी है, and they also speak from a lot of experiences that they probably might have had. So हाँ, हमेशा ये होता है. I mean, if I go for any assignment, let's say a late night assignment, for my husband the concern always is अच्छा गाड़ी breakdown ना हो जाए, and also as you said कि कोई carjacking ना कर ले, कोई मुझे लूट ना ले. And but for women it's very different. You get harassed from several aspects. I mean, even the police doesn't come and support you. I mean, the police questions you some weird question. आप इतनी रात को अकेले क्या कर रही थी? I mean, उसका क्या मतलब होता है? Knowing that I'm a journalist, I'm showing my press card, even then he would ask me. ये सब होता है, and I think that is where parents and your family get worried about.
Do you remember your early days of journalism?
Yes, of course. I mean, those were the days when the reservation row was, sort of burning. And my first editor, Mr. Tarun Basu, he was phenomenal. I mean, the way he taught journalism, I don't think any journalism school would have ever taught me. And today when I see many young journalists, bragging about the fact that, oh, they are from this college, that college, IMC, Ashoka. I feel when you get the best training when you're working in it, right? So my first editor would always tell me that write any story in a way as if a blind man can also see, it should have that many layers and colors. And that time this 24/7 news cycle was not so crazy. मतलब ऐसा नहीं कि अच्छा पीएम अभी जा रहे तो अभी के अभी एक स्टोरी, मतलब स्टोरी आधे घंटे में स्टोरी होनी चाहिए, तो वो चीज़ तब नहीं थी. So you would get time and write good story. And I remember I was in my kind of second year of journalism when the assassination of Benazir Bhutto happened. And that was like my first thing, and I was going home, and it happened around 7 in the evening. So my editor said that, where are you going? I said, going home. He said, don't you know what has happened? So aaj ka raat bhul jao ghar jana, sit here and file stories. So that's when I realized that journalism is a very different animal, and it is only passion that will keep you there. It'll not be the money. It is never the money. You can ask any journalist. So it's just the passion for news, to follow the news and to be in the thick of things, that makes you go in this profession.
And what was your first on-field assignment that really sort of troubled you, challenged you?
So, I mean, when I was just starting, and when you start as a journalist, you're called cub reporter or the rookie reporter, and you're given all sorts of, I mean, I was thankful that my bosses still gave me opportunities to go. Let's say sometimes I had gone abroad also. But I think the most challenging at that time when I was just starting was to cover the entire issue that was happening with the Narmada Dam. At that time, it was quite, in the news. So I did that.
If you could just help people said context to what the issue was.
The problem was not to build the dam. The local communities there were against it, but it was, I mean, we were told by the government that it would be very good for the ecology there and for for the region there. But then there were a lot of protests happening, and we had to meet the village communities there who were suffering because of the dam and all of that, and the villages would get washed away. At that time, those were the apprehensions. So that was the context. Then there was very different assignment. Immediately after that came was of Finnair, the national air carrier of Finland. They were then starting their first flights from India, Delhi to Helsinki, the first flight. So they took a bunch of reporters to Helsinki to show how Helsinki can become this global transit hub. That was also, new to me, in the sense I've never covered civil aviation before that. So that is how eventually I learned. I was given to cover the Ministry of Fertilizers, and I had no clue about fertilizers, nothing at all. So I learned everything. I used to go to the Ministry of Fertilizers website and learn what they do, what are the main issues that farmers face. So I would, attend a lot, go to several villages to understand what is it the kind of fertilizers farmers actually look for.
Now, coming back to the Afghanistan episode, what prompted you? Like, where did the madness come from?
Well, I would not really call it madness, but I was covering foreign policy by then, almost like 15, 17 years. And Afghanistan is one issue that has been going on for several decades. I mean, I read that in history also, from the Great Game days of 18th century and all that. Also, the fact that when the first Taliban regime was there, when they came in 1996, and then when they were finally ousted in 2001 by the US troops and NATO, it was my husband who went there to cover it. So he covered in 2001 how the Taliban was sort of, kind of ousted out of Afghanistan, and a Republican government came into being. So, I mean, that region, I would say, always fascinated me. Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, that belt. Coming to this episode, I mean, we all know what was going on in Afghanistan at that point of time, right? The Republican government was sort of falling apart. The US did a deal with Taliban in 2020, right after COVID. I mean, when people were kind of starting to get back to their normal life, you have a Donald Trump signing a kind of a peace deal with the Taliban. So what the question was at that point of time, this is the very same Taliban that you were chasing out, and you chased out at one point of time. And now you're handing over that very country onto them on a platter. So what was your war on terror at all? So right now you will see a lot of commentary and things coming out that what is it that you wanted to do with Afghanistan? You enter somebody's house, mess it up in the name of combating terror. But what do you eventually do? You did not even build that society. In fact, you killed people's dreams, and then you left when you had to leave. So I was following the Afghanistan story very closely. I was writing about it. But this particular assignment I really wanted to do because I realized that, maybe the Taliban is coming back, because India was also shutting down its consulates that it had, which were built very painstakingly, right? Because you also have a Pakistan ISI sitting there. So it was a win for India at that point of time to have that many number of consulates in Afghanistan. Our presence was huge. I mean, if you see the goodwill that Indians have in Afghanistan is phenomenal. Had I not gone there, I would have never realized. So not just, I mean, in my book, I mention a lot about their fascination with Shah Rukh Khan. But apart from that, a normal, common Afghan girl or Afghan boy would tell me that, our dream is to go to India, go to Delhi, get admitted in a Amity or a Sharda University, and I know my life will be set. That's how they view India. I mean, eventually we also sort of dashed their hopes, but the immediate trigger for this, for me to go, was that this is your own neighborhood. You should not be hearing about Afghanistan from New York Times or a Washington Post. I respect their work. I totally respect the journalism they do. But I thought it was my responsibility also as a journalist to go to my immediate neighborhood as a foreign policy reporter and see what's happening. You can't just sit and say that, oh, if I go there, I'll get killed, the Taliban will do something. That's
You
you're not a
make it
journalist.
sound like it's not a big deal. You
No,
just go there, you get killed by Taliban. I mean, it's this is legit fear.
I don't think so, Zen, and you'll understand because when you're chasing a story and following something so passionately, the last thing that comes to your mind is somebody will kill me. I mean that you can get killed even while you're just out of your home, and somebody can come and hit your car, kind of a thing. And that I always tell my son also, that if you keep fearing all the time, you won't be able to do anything. And my profession is such that when you sign on for it, you know that you're not in a safe zone. When I was going, the Danish incident had also happened. Reuters photographer, and he got unfortunately killed by the Taliban. So the fear was compounding within my family and in my at that time my editor and all. So yeah, but I mean, I didn't really think it that manner. I wanted to chase the story, and I wanted to say it from India's perspective. What is it that will happen for India if the Taliban is really back into power?
So the day you got your visa, or perhaps the day you told your parents and your husband and your family about it, उनका क्या reaction था?
Well, so I lost my father before that, and I'm sure if had he been there, he would have really encouraged me to go for it. And but my mother also never stopped me. But her only fear was, after losing your father, I don't want to lose my elder child. So that assurance, that is one thing that kept sort of bugging me all the time. That if something happens to me, what will happen to her? I know my son would have really, I mean, he would have grown up. My husband would have taken care, but yeah, I mean, that was the only worry. So my mother was, she didn't stop me, but she also kind of was very, very apprehensive. Uh, that's about it. And my in-laws knew, इसको बोल के कुछ फायदा तो है नहीं, अब इसने decide कर लिया तो जाएगी. So I lost my father-in-law also by then. So my mother-in-law also had the same kind of worry. But then she said, I mean, we know the kind of work you do, so हम आपको रोकेंगे नहीं. So that was it. But the best thing was, I would really tell you, Zen, the reaction I got from my son, who was that time 8.5, 9. He just told me one thing, that, okay, you're going. And I left on 7th of August, 8th of August, actually, early morning. He said, 23rd August is my birthday, tab tak aap aa jana. That's the promise you have to make me. So that was the only thing. He said, my son said, I will not stop you. I know you will go. And one day, when I grow up, I'll tell my friends that देखो मेरी माँ गई थी. So that was touching and also very encouraging. And my husband was, well, anyway, he has given up on me. So he was like,
Like everybody else.
so I've also sort of given up on him when he goes to Kashmir all the time, and he's also a conflict photojournalist. So he's like, "Jao, but wahi, do best of your work. Come back with whatever best you can, because you'll get a lot of stories." And my plan never really was to show the war there, because वो तब तक बहुत लोग दिखा चुके थे. टीवी में वो पूरा चल रहा था, and TV reporters were going and also flying out with Afghan forces and showing the war with Taliban. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to tell the story of common Afghans. That was the thing.
And what was your first day in Kabul like? Was it your first time in Afghanistan?
Yes, so that was my first time in Afghanistan, which is why I was all the more kind of excited to go. I'd been to Pakistan several times, and because of my work, and also, when I was in DU. But yeah, coming back to Afghanistan, first day was fascinating, although people told me that you will see Kabul as this world-class city, and everything is like Delhi and very shiny and all that. But then I realized somewhere there was this kind of palpable tension. Apart from the abject poverty that hits you when you are right outside, go out of the airport, you realize that it is a very different country. A country that has been living and breathing war, and they know how to manage that war ecosystem. We can't even think about it. So yeah, I mean, first day of Kabul was fascinating. I got detained for a couple of hours by the Afghan police there because I was, like a typical Indian tourist and journalist. I was taking photos one after another, sticking my hand out of the cab window, and then, immediately you were chased by Afghan police, and they would be like, and I had my head covered. I didn't want to invite trouble, and these things don't matter to me. I'll eventually, come to that. So they said that you're a Pakistani spy, aap ISI ke ho, and all that. Thankfully, my cab driver at that point of time, in the local Pashto language, he told them that no. And then I said that no, I'm from Mumbai. I'm from, I know Shah Rukh Khan. They're like, okay, and I was immediately released, so to say. But then I realized the tension that were going on, that the Taliban was there. It was just a fancy thing to say that 15th August, as if gates opened and they entered. They were very much there, and that they realized that the country is falling apart. So that was kind of the first story I filed from there, a video story and a text story. Many people, they called out and said, oh, when you send immature journalist, यही होता है, कुछ पता तो है नहीं, ऐसे ही बोल दिया. So people were not even on the ground, and how I was challenged by many, so to say, experts and journalists and many former diplomats, that ऐसा कुछ नहीं होने वाला है, कोई तालिबान नहीं आने वाला है, US will manage everything. But the rest is history. We know what happened.
And this, on a lighter note, this Shah Rukh Khan incident happened several times.
Yes.
So how did Shah Rukh Khan save you from Afghanistan?
Well, that was the last thing that ever came in my mind, because I'm again one person, and my son really curses me for that. I don't like movies at all, especially Bollywood type movies. But I realized that, beyond an era, like Amitabh Bachchan was an era, Shah Rukh Khan is another era. And soft diplomacy has been always working between India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. So I realized if you take that name once, you're kind of in a safe zone, And that came as, and not just Shah Rukh Khan, I realized now even Deepika Padukone there is so famous. So the moment you take that name, be it a Taliban fighter or a normal Afghan, a common Afghan, a cab driver, a taxi driver, they would be like, immediately you're in that respectable zone. So that was fascinating for me. And I realized that's like my magic formula. Kabhi bhi problem hai, bas ek Shah Rukh Khan bol do and you are saved. You're no more a Pakistani ISI spy kind of thing.
And not the other name that I would expect you to not take there. But anyway, the first day in Kabul, and then you later moved to Mazar Sharif and all of those places. How did the average Afghan look at you? उनका क्या perspective था आपकी तरफ और हिंदुस्तान की तरफ in general?
So again, the difference that I realized, they see Indians in Kabul and compared to that in outside of Kabul. So within Kabul, it was like, okay, yet another journalist from India has come, अपना कुछ को करेगी, शोशा करके चली जाएगी. And I mean, I don't blame them for that. ऐसा perspective उनका इसलिए है क्योंकि when you live and breathe war all the time, and people come do stories on you, then they go back, in their normal lives. But वो तो वही जीते हैं ना. I mean, nobody comes and sort of saves them. But then, yeah, I mean, many people were worried that I was there alone. I didn't get my cameraman at that time because he couldn't get a visa, unfortunately. And the Afghanistan embassy at that point of time, I think I was the last one to get the visa as a journalist. After that, they stopped issuing visas to journalists because they also, I think, got the intelligence inputs that the Taliban is closing in, so to say. So they stopped giving visas. But yeah, their perspective was, what is it that India will do for us now that you're realizing that the Americans are going to leave us soon, and we are sort of, getting defeated in the war against Taliban. I did one story at that time, and that I got to know from some of my sources in the Afghan government at that point of time, in the defense ministry and foreign ministries, that we need air support from India, because the US by then had taken away the air support, and that with that they wanted that air support because then they could target and locate where the Taliban was hiding. But when I was in Mazar-e-Sharif, there people were kind of, and I would wear my flak jacket and all, bulletproof, because anywhere in any shooting can happen. So in Mazar-e-Sharif, I remember, and that was a learning experience for me. I was standing in front of the Blue Mosque, an iconic and beautiful mosque. I mean, it's heavenly. So I was looking at that, and I thought that outside there is a kind of a chalk है, वहाँ पे markets है, तो मैंने सोचा वहाँ खड़े होके एक shoot करूँ, in the sense a small video for my organization. And then while I was talking on the camera, I realized I'm surrounded by at least 50 men. And मेरा जो वहाँ पे कैब ड्राइवर थे, उन्होंने कहा, मैम अब आपको चलना चाहिए, ये लोग आपको घिर रहे हैं और कुछ कर देंगे. So then I stopped my recording and I asked them कि आप कुछ बोलना चाहते. They said, नहीं, आप ये सब क्या पहनी हुई है? I mean, in their own language, through my cab driver, who was also an interpreter, who also gave me Wi-Fi. That's another fascinating story of Afghanistan, that people are always ready to support reporters. You don't need to carry any equipment. They're there with you. They also carry AK-47 as your bodyguard. Something happens to you, they'll be your bodyguard. So anyway, he was interpreting that they are having a problem. Why are you wearing this kind of attire, ये bulletproof jacket and bulletproof cap? They don't think आपको कुछ होने वाला है. So by wearing this, आप उनको डरा रही हैं in a way. So if you have to do reporting in the middle of the road, खड़े होके आपको अगर video shoot करना है, ये सब आपको खोलना पड़ेगा. So then I had to, open all that up, and I then did my recording. So that was one. Then I realized, even I was, inside the mosque roaming around, and the head imam of that mosque, he was very, very, I would say he was very gracious, and he told me that वैसे तो हम औरतों को अलाउ नहीं करते हैं inside, but आप इंडिया से आई हैं तो आपको मैं कुछ खास दिखाना चाहता हूँ. तो वो मुझे एकदम अंदर लेके गए. वहाँ पे उनका एक लाइब्रेरी था, very old library. वहाँ पे we sat and he gave me a typical Afghan chai, they call it subs chai. So then he said कि हमें तो कोई फ़र्क नहीं पड़ता अगर तालिबान आ भी जाए, क्योंकि वो हमारे में से एक है. It is within the same community. ये तो अमेरिकन है जो फॉरेनर्स है, आए हमें लूटे और अब चले जा रहे हैं. सो आप इसको ऐसे ना दिखाए कि जैसे हम सब डरे हुए हैं. हम डरे हुए नहीं हैं, ये हम में से एक है. सो आपको काबुल में कुछ और शायद लोग बोल रहे हैं, हम खुश हैं कि अगर तालिबान यहाँ आएंगे. ठीक है, इट वॉज हिज पर्सपेक्टिव, यू मे नॉट अग्री विथ इट, राइट? बिकॉज वो मैंने जब अपने स्टोरी में लिखा, लोगों को बहुत परेशानी हुई. एंड आई सेड इसीलिए ग्राउंड रिपोर्टिंग करना इतनी ज़रूरी है. देयर आर सेवरल वॉइसेस दैट यू नीड टू टेक इनटू अकाउंट. एंड जब मैं मज़ार से वापस आई काबुल, within 2 days Mazar was taken over by Taliban. It was bound to happen, and somehow the world media was refusing to write about that. So so these are the kind of voices I heard. Like similarly, I heard another voice. I had gone to a beauty parlor, and I thought since
before you speak on that,
yeah,
how are the beauty parlors in Afghanistan? Like, because you mentioned that
very nice. They're very nice.
Better than the ones in Delhi?
Well, I will not compare better, but same, you don't, if you go, and I don't know how much you're aware, but if you go for a shampoo blow dry, you are not disappointed. I was very happy with the kind of blow dry they would give me, and I loved it, the shampooing they did. And so that's where I thought, as a woman journalist, that was an advantage which my male counterparts didn't get. They were only showing the guns and the bombs and all of that. So here I went inside the beauty parlor. I spoke to all the girls, and they were so much into that American way of living, right? And they would be like, एक दिन, आज मैंने, and I spoke to the owner, and her name was Gul, and she told me, मैंने ये बहुत मेहनत से अपना पार्लर खोला है, अब मैं ऐसा पार्लर इंडिया में भी जाके खोलना चाहती हूँ. So, but today her parlor has been burned down. The Taliban, first thing they did, and I knew for a fact Taliban aisa karega if they come, which is why my target was to go to a parlor, is to burn those down. But yeah, at that point of time, they were like real nice salons, very world class. And these women, they have learned proper certified beautician courses, some mostly from Islamabad. And Islamabad is a very fashionable city. I don't know if that'll put you in trouble again, but it's a very
All
fashionable
the
city.
trouble is on you. So before Taliban actually entered Kabul, जो हम बॉलीवुड में अफगानिस्तान देखते हैं कि एक पर्सपेक्टिव है कि बंदूक की मंडियाँ लगी होती हैं, आप जाओ, यू कैन जस्ट बाय कलाशनिकोव ऑफ द रैक्स, तो वो उन सब एस्पेक्ट से एक्चुअल काबुल कितना फ़र्क है?
नहीं, काबुल में यू विल नॉट गेट टू सी दैट. वो चीज़ आप देखोगे मोस्टली इन द रूरल एरियाज, इन द प्रोविंसेस. वो चीज़ मैंने सबसे पहले देखी थी पेशावर में, जब मैं कॉलेज एक्सकर्शन में गई थी. देयर वाज अ प्लेस कॉल्ड किस्सा कहानी बाज़ार, किस्सा ख्वानी बाज़ार वो लोग बोलते हैं. बट मैं उनसे वहाँ भी मैं बात करना चाह रही थी, एंड मेरे प्रोफेसर्स वर लाइक, बस से नीचे नहीं उतरोगी, लोगों से बात नहीं करोगी. ऐसे फिर आए क्यों है, मतलब सिर्फ ऐसे साइट सीइंग मुझसे नहीं होता है. सो मैं बस से उतर गई. वो लोग कुछ शॉपिंग कर रहे थे. अगेन, शॉपिंग नेवर फैसिनेटेड मी. आई सेड आप लोग करिए, मैं 2-4 बात कर लूँ. सो देन somebody told me, and I was that time I had a camera with me, a very professional camera my husband had given. So then they said, आप पत्रकार हैं, आप जर्नलिस्ट हैं. मैंने कहा नहीं, स्टूडेंट. तो आप अंदर आओ. तो they were selling caps in that shop, right? And it was it's like a typical bazaar that you see even in Chandni Chowk and all. But the backside, they were selling all the Kalashnikovs. And then eventually I saw rows of grenades, Kalashnikovs, like you can buy onion or potatoes.
क्या दाम पे मिलती है?
दाम तो मैंने खैर पूछा नहीं था, but then they said anywhere from 1,000 Indian rupees to 10,000 Indian rupees.
For a Kalashnikov?
Whatever variety you want, depending on that. But yeah, I mean, I was out of my group, so my professors panicked. So then they chased me, and then they saw me seeing that. They're like, come back immediately to the bus. That was my first thing to realize how buying weapons is so easy in a place like this, because when you see wars for years and years and decades, I mean, weapons are, it's just there. Like I said, in Mazar-e-Sharif, my taxi driver, he had one AK-47 always in his, in his car. So I would sit in the back seat. I was like, ये gun रखना ज़रूरी है. He would be, हाँ मैम, आपको कोई कुछ करेगा, एकदम उठा के मार देना. I'm like, अच्छा, ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं. So, it's like that. So, and also on the last day, 15th of August, जब मैं आ रही थी होटल वापस, and you must have read about it, लोग बस ऐसे ही काबुल में रास्ते में चले गए कि कहाँ है तालिबान, हम उनको मारेंगे. सबके पास एक एक गन था. I mean, from a 60-year-old man to a 10-year-old boy, everybody had a gun. Casually, slinging from their shoulders, and they would say, "सामने दिखेंगे तो मार देंगे." So it's like that.
बहुत सारे episodes हैं in the book which have fascinated me. चाहे वो मज़ार शरीफ का हो, when you're going to Kandahar and you couldn't go and came back. एक जो मुझे particularly fascinate करता है was the dinner that you had at a Turkish place. कि where you're going to interview the ex-prime minister, and you were taken to this restaurant जहाँ पर you were the only woman. Can you describe that setup, what that dinner was like, beyond the food, of course, to which we'll come later?
Yeah, I mean, well, we can come to the food now. It was a fascinating. I still remember the taste, but yeah, that was a Turkish joint, and the next day I was supposed to, I mean, I did interview Gulbuddin Hikmatyar, and he's the former Prime Minister of Afghanistan who wanted to be the president, and he's infamously called the Butcher of Kabul for several reasons, historical reasons for what he did. Um, so yeah, they took me to this Turkish cafe just for a kind of a relationship building to understand whether I'm a genuine journalist or I'm doing some kind of tricks with them. It happens in places like that. So sitting there on the terrace, I realized, wow, Kabul is this fantastic city. You can enjoy kebab sitting on a terrace. But then I realized there's not a single woman sitting out there. So I asked them that, I hope it will not land you into any kind of trouble. They said, no, no, people, I mean, women here, they don't really come out at night for terrace. I mean, sometimes they do for this kind of terrace restaurants, but usually they don't. And that was before Taliban came in. So to say that, everything is Taliban is doing, as if before them the society was too open, it was not. Even in Kabul, I had seen several women, their heads covered. Maybe not actually like covered your entire face, but their heads were covered. So, so that was good for me. I mean, I realized sitting out there, nobody was. You are not feeling uncomfortable. I need to say that. I generally feel more uncomfortable sitting in a terrace restaurant in Noida late night. Seriously, I was not feeling that uncomfortable there. Nobody was looking at me. Nobody was passing any kind of comments, and nobody was making me feel that you're the only woman sitting out here, so we can ogle at you. No, I felt very safe. So that was one part of it. And of course, the second part, you can ask your question, but the food was phenomenal. They had layers and layers and layers of kebab. And that's another thing. If you share the food with them, you are, of course, more, you're closer with them. You can't say sitting there, ओ मुझे एकदम इंडियन खाना चाहिए, मुझे यहाँ पे मेरा दाल चाहिए, वही चावल चाहिए. तो वहीं पे एक जर्नलिस्ट खत्म हो गया. I mean, I'm not saying you need to change your preferences, but somewhere you can do some little adjustments. If they're taking you to a Turkish joint, you can enjoy that food to open up with them, and they will also then open up with you, because your ultimate goal is to get that interview, get that story, and tell it to the world.
Your last day in Kabul was very, very eventful, and 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 I don't want to describe it too much, because I would really want कि लोग जाकर किताब पढ़ें और उसमें देखें कि आपने किस तरह से लिखा है. But all the things you saw there, have they left a very deep trauma with you? Because some of the things were very graphic. One, if you could quickly describe how your last day and what all happened that day, and what kind of an impression has it left for you for years to come?
See, that is the reason I came out with the book, because I thought I can only get over with the trauma. I would not say trauma, but many haunting scenes that I can still sort of visualize, which I couldn't write at that point of time when I was doing my reportage, because you also being a journalist, you have to do reportage in a certain way. But in a book, you can be more of yourself and express your feelings. So one incident that keeps coming back to me, and I would say it haunts me at several times, is when we were waiting to go inside the technical airport, which the US was managing, and I was with the entire team of the Indian embassy who were evacuating, and we were standing right in front of the gates, and they were doing some paperwork and checking whether this is the India team or not, because it was a very sensitive time. And outside there were these thousands and thousands of common Afghan people who were wanting to climb the wall and go inside the military airport, which the US was managing, to escape. And there were these women who saw, in my car, we were only women sitting. Some of the ITBP officials, women officials, and me being a women journalist, so we were all put in one car. And seeing us, the other women who were there outside of the car, common Afghan women, they were holding their children and telling us, banging our window, almost breaking it, that at least take my child inside with you, at least he will be living, because we will die. And those scenes, they at that point of time I realized, oh my goodness, what has this country become in just a matter of few days. And so, but then I couldn't help them. I couldn't even, I mean, we were told you cannot even touch your window glasses, so just sit till the time we enter. I think at that point of time you felt so helpless. And when I came back after, I think 4 5 days, the Abhigate incident happened. There was a blast, and I'm sure all those women who were throwing their children at us and requesting us must have died along with their children in their laps. So I think that is something, it will always continue to haunt me, that I couldn't do anything and I was so helpless at that point of time.
You know, I used to do street theater back in the day, and this one time, and I was back in college, I was very proud of the fact that I was trying to be an activist, trying to change the world. And I did a play in the slums of Tughlaqabad, where it's about, send children to school and all of those basic stuff. And वो नाटक हमने करा and we were well received and all of that. और उसके बाद जब मैं वहाँ से वापस आ रहा था, I had those children clinging to me, saying कि भैया हमको स्कूल जाना है, हमको स्कूल जाना है. And that was the day I realized कि मैं इनको सिर्फ झूठी होप दे रहा हूँ. I can't actually take them to any school. And that was the last day I actually stopped doing any kind of street activism. So I can imagine what kind of a pain that would have been. Particularly considering कि you have a child at home. Being a mother, does that sometime come into your work? Because does that give you one reason to be scared? Because like you said that आपको भी वो था कि हाँ, I have to go back to your child. Did being a mother impact how you saw your journalism, your work? Did it change anything in you?
Not really, because I feel, see, I might sound very idealistic, but I feel very strongly of the fact that journalism is the fourth pillar of democracy. And the day you sign up to be a journalist, everything else comes later. I get the fact that why people kind of say that, अच्छा, देश के लिए मर मिटने वाले soldiers होते हैं. Nobody thinks that देश के लिए मर मिटने वाले to some extent journalists भी होते हैं. And I want my child to understand that if you have a journalist mother, you need to also have these things in your mind, the kind of risks we both, we both have, me and my husband, of course. So yeah, I mean, but it never stops me from doing my work. But yes, I'm extra cautious. I don't take unnecessary risk to show the world, oh, what a hero I am, which is again foolishness even to your profession that you can do. Just silently go in, do your work, ask the right questions, come back and tell the world whatever it is my motto. And I think somewhere down the line, people need to know, like this incident, of not being able to help them. I realized if I can at least write a book and tell the world what the US did, how they messed up with a simple, with a simple mother who was just thinking that whether my child would live or not. What have you done? So somebody has to. I mean, even if I couldn't take her child and bring him to India, I don't know whether the child was a girl or a boy, but at least the world should be aware of the hypocritical democracy we talk about, and US as this big savior.
Lastly, me and my wife are discussing that, we often go back to the poem that Rabindranath Tagore wrote, Where the Mind is Without Fear. What kind of a nation would you want your child to inherit?
Well, good that you talked about that poem, which has always been my favorite. And in Bengali, we say, Chitto jetha bhoy shunno uchcho jetha shir. So I guess my child should grow up in a world that should be, free from all kinds of shackles that we have these days. Freedom to talk, freedom to eat, basic things, basic rights, which our constitution gives us. We've just taken it for granted, and we let our political leaders take advantage of us because we don't study. Nobody studies the constitution, nobody understands the rights you have. Because if somebody enters your house and say that you cannot have a beef or a meat or anything, you need to know what kind of rights are getting violated, right? You can't just fight on religious matters. But I don't know. Maybe it's very utopian, but I have been brought up in that kind of an India, right, where we didn't know. We never saw our friends. अच्छा ये मुस्लिम है, ये हिंदू है, ये मंदिर जाता है, ये तिलक लगाता है, वो सब हम नहीं करते थे. हम भी पूजा करते थे. वी वर्शिप दुर्गा एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट. दुर्गा पूजा हमारे लिए एक बहुत बड़ी फेस्टिवल हुआ करती थी, जहाँ पे दुर्गा को हम मीट चढ़ाते थे नवमी के दिन. Yaha, you have something else happening. So I don't want, I want my child to grow up in that kind of a country where, we never saw each other through the religious lens, which I think is going to be dangerous if we start seeing everybody through that lens. That's going to be dangerous. This world has to be where you can have basic freedom to study whatever you want, freedom to eat, and freedom to speak.
I think with that, we'll come to a close on this episode. Thank you so much, Nayanima, for taking out time.
Thank you.
I will pin the description and the link to your book in the description box. But मेरी तरफ से I would really, because मैंने वो किताब एक बार में पढ़ी है. मैं सुबह 8 बजे पढ़ने बैठा और by my brunch, the book was over. Because
Thank you.
I was hooked onto it. And like I was saying that it reads like a Netflix thriller. कि वो एक literally एक मिनी सीरीज की तरह है. हर एपिसोड एक हुक पे ख़त्म होता है, क्लिफ हैंगर पे ख़त्म होता है. So would really request you guys to check the book out. And thank you so much, Nayanima, not just for coming here, for writing that book down, and for being the brave journalist that nobody else wants to be.
No, thank you, Zain. It's an honor to be on your podcast. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.